really heavy topics. I remember the first conversation was on infant mortality, and we had Rashida Larkin as my guest. And then we talked to my friend Beth Sump, or I should say Elizabeth Sump, and she shared the story about when her daughter, 9 years old, died. And then I hope you caught us last week, Facebook Live, my first time ever. And we were just wrapping up our conversation about grief. And I shared some information about Beth's daughter, about a foundation that was made in her name because she wanted to fix people's hearts. And I believe that it's a beautiful way that her legacy lives on so that she can fix people's hearts. So if you haven't seen that, check it out on Facebook Live. And small disclaimer, my words were backwards for some reason on my whiteboard, but I hope you can read it. But it goes through all of the information about grief. And so today we are talking about building a healthy temple. It's the beginning of the year, and we all have these New Year's resolutions. Part of it is about losing weight, being healthy. At least that was part of mine. And I shared with people on Instagram and Facebook that I need to lose 8 pounds. Yes, and I heard from some of you that, hey, 8 pounds is nothing, but for me, it is something. And I have in the studio with me today my friend, because you know I only interview my friends, is Dr. Karen Cooper. And she is a specialist in bariatric medicine, and we are glad to have her here in the studio, not just to help me talk about losing weight, but to talk about the public health crisis of obesity and how it impacts the African American community and what her experience is with dealing with patients and what her advice is. So selfishly, there is a part about it for me, but there is a bigger conversation. So Karen, you don't mind me calling you Karen, thank you for being here. We are so excited to have you share your testimony of how you got involved in bariatric medicine and then to help us on this journey of losing weight. So thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. It's
Absolutely.
really great to be here.
Absolutely. Now, just before we jump in, tell us how you got involved in bariatric medicine. What is your personal story?
So, it's funny because it was not intentional. So while I was growing up, my mom really emphasized health in our household, and she had 6 of us, and so each child gave her a little bit more extra weight. And at the time that she decided she was going to do something about it, I must have been about 8 years old.
Okay.
And so her journey into getting back to where she was in terms of health and fitness was something that was observed by me. And so it was incredibly influential in my life. And I remember wanting to be a dietitian. You know, I don't think that she recognized that she planted those seeds. So when I went to college, that was what I was going after. You know, I wanted to learn about nutrition, and I really want to, you know, get into weight management and just learn how to make sure we keep our bodies healthy. And then I took a anatomy class.
Changed everything.
It changed everything. And so my human anatomy and physiology class, where I had to skin a cat, very big cat, and I saw these amazing muscles and tendons and joints, and it was just, you know, how beautiful was our body, even though this was an animal, but we're all animals, right?
Right.
But this was an animal, and how beautiful it was, and I wanted to learn more.
Okay.
And that was what got me into medical school, thinking that, you know what, I really need to know more about our bodies, not just the nutritional aspect of it, to make sure that we're healthy all around. There was another course in school too, that was a health course that seemed to link increased weight with a lot of different diseases like hypertension and, you know, cardiac disease. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to become a physician so that I could really start working on the background or the link, because a lot of people were not really looking at it from that perspective. So those were my early influences, and that's how it all started. It really was not intentional. It just sort of evolved.
Right.
You know?
And it evolved into a place where you're being able to help people with the nutrition aspect.
Right.
And live healthy holistically, not
Right.
just focusing on food. Love it.
Right. That was really amazing that here I had this desire for that for so long, you know.
Right.
I went into medicine, but I'd already started the background in nutrition and exercise physiology. And so it was just a natural, you know, evolution. So yes. So here I am. I finished up my residency in Cleveland.
Okay.
And I got an opportunity to start working on bariatric medicine, which at that time, 2006, it was not really heard of, right? It was quite new. It's not so new anymore. And so that's where I actually began really focusing primarily on people who had weight issues and diseases that are associated with the weight issues.
Okay, so let's talk about this being a public health issue. Because it is a crisis where we are overweight, and it's not just adults, but it's also starting at a younger age.
Yeah.
And this negative impact that it has on our bodies, and you mentioned the chronic conditions that come along with that. So help us understand, how did we get here? And the reason I ask that is because we live in a world of knowledge. We have access to the internet that we didn't have, say, 15 years ago, the way that we do now. And so if I really wanted to lose my 8 pounds, I can go Google keto diets. I can go watch somebody on YouTube to see how they did it. But this plethora of information doesn't seem to help prevent it from being a health crisis, a public issue. So help us understand, why is it still an issue?
Yes, well, it's an issue because there's abundance. There's so many factors involved. Okay, first there's abundance. We have access to food like we've never had before. And it's quite inexpensive depending on what you choose to eat.
Okay.
Right? So there's abundance. There's pleasure. It's pleasurable to eat and drink things that we like.
That's true.
Right? And now we overeat. And so, I mean, why do we have to stop eating something that we really enjoy, right? So we may say, oh, that's okay, I'll just do it today, and and it just continues to roll. So the overeating then becomes something that might have started as, I really like this thing, and I'm just gonna have a little bit more, and then it just continues to go on, and before you know it, you've got an addiction. And then with technology, right? Technology has allowed us to be less active. We save so much energy with technology, right? We're less active. We don't have to move as much as we used to before. We've got genetic factors that are part of it, right? So if you have a predisposition to being overweight or obese, then here comes the environment. Right. With the abundance of foods, the cheapness of foods, the super size me. I think a lot of this started too with the buffets. And so it's just that the environment has become the genetic part was the gun, right? The loaded gun, and the genetic part is we're pulling the trigger with that. And so we really need some help. We need more help than just our individual selves and just our medical world. It needs to be a team approach. At this point, it looks like we really are going to need policy to help us with this, because we've been working on it for a while. We've seen a little bit of progress, and then there's been some stagnation, and now really the last report that was out, this is the highest we've ever been in terms of being overweight and obese as a nation, and the health of a nation.
I don't want to brush by what you said about policy. So you're talking about health policy. So for the audience that may not understand how that impacts this public health issue, help us to unpack that a little bit further.
Okay, so let's talk about all the beverages that are full of sugar. Right.
Okay.
And let's talk about all the ads that are out there and who they're targeting. Targeting kids mostly. There was a recent report that said they're targeting more minority kids, right? There are fast food chains in abundance, and particularly in more neighborhoods than some.
Right.
The foods that are healthy for you are so much more expensive than the ones that aren't. And so unless we get some sort of regulation to say, you cannot have so many of these types of foods abundantly, or there might be a tax that's associated with purchasing certain things, or some sort of incentive for not so many ads to be there, right? And the targeting of the population, more nutrition labeling with foods, so that we know, at least we have knowledge in front of us what we're really taking in instead of just blindly eating. those are some of the policy moves or acts that need to, some of them are already in place, but are taking a long time. We've been talking about this for a while, actually, about 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, but really to get it enacted and moved along, it has been difficult.
And so when we're talking about health policy, I want to sum it up because it sounds like what you're talking about is reshaping our environment so that we can limit or monitor our choices.
Right.
Because you're right, you see fast food restaurants in other communities, but you would never see them in another community.
Right.
And why is that? And if that is what is there, then that is the option that we're going to take. And it reminds me of a study that we did years ago in my nursing career where we understood that this certain community would go to McDonald's because it was there and maybe they didn't have heat in their home. They didn't have a working refrigerator. And so McDonald's was a warm place that provided a dollar menu. And so they would eat there because that is what is available. So what we had to do is teach them how to make healthier choices when you go to McDonald's because it was inevitable. They were going to go and their children were going to go after school. And so how did they make healthier choices even though they were in a fast food restaurant? That was trying to work with their environment because the truth is people can't actually move, right? This is the environment that they live in. And so how do they make better, healthier choices for them? So that sounds like for me, that's what policy would drive. And so that's how we would address this public health issue. Okay.
That's part of it.
That's part of it.
Because, you know, there's another set of people where that's not an issue in terms of economics, but there's still a way to sue there.
Yes.
Right? So it's the overeating, it's the pleasuring, you know, of foods and drinks and things like that. So cultural factors are involved, social factors are involved, you know, when it comes down to Thanksgiving or Christmas. Or, you know, those are not days that you are going to either hold fast to a diet or put yourself on a diet plan, restricted plan. So, you know, there are all these factors involved.
Right, because typically after a holiday, I'll say, you know, before the holiday, I'll say, oh, okay, I'm just going to eat whatever I want to eat. I'll get back on track after. But then I don't get back on track. And I think that is the cycle that most people struggle with. And so when I say that I need to lose 8 pounds, it is because I've been cheating, right? I know how to eat, Karen. I know what I need to do in order to eat healthy. But then I cheat one little bit at a time. And you talked about addiction because I know I'm addicted to sugar. I love sweets. I love carbs, bread, pasta, rice. And those are the things that I don't need to eat, but I do. And so when you talk about pleasuring, using food to pleasure, and then cultural, you know, there's certain foods that we eat, especially in the Black community, that may not be the healthiest. How do you help us to deal with that? That's part of the frustration.
That's part of the frustration. So we have to rewire our mindset. Okay. I can't do it for you, but I do try to guide you. I do try to guide my patients. Unfortunately, this still falls on you, and it's really about rewiring our mindset. And I think we think that to lose weight is not work, but it is a lot of work. It is so hard to lose weight, right? For those same reasons. It's abundant, food is abundant, it's pleasurable, and, you know, we're not wired to not do the things that aren't pleasurable or, you know, fun or whatever. I mean, deliberately, right? So, and we also do not see the downside of increasing weight gain because it doesn't hit you right away. It takes a little while. It's these tiny little insults over and over and over and over, and then all of a sudden you have diabetes, or all of a sudden you have high blood pressure, those types of things. And so we think that we can manage it. You know, like you said, oh, I'm just going to eat Thanksgiving, I'll get back on track. But then life gets in the way, right? How many of us really give priority to, you know, healthy lifestyle behaviors when we're busy, or if a crisis occurs, or...
It's actually the first thing that goes.
It's the first thing that goes. Because you look at your life and you're like, what can I maneuver to do whatever it is I need to do?
Right.
Right?
Right.
And there's also the thought that in terms of eating disorders, we think of eating disorders like anorexia, you're starving yourself, or bulimia where you're purging what you eat.
Right.
And now we're a little bit more familiar with binging, where you eat large amounts for a certain period of time. But people don't realize that emotional eating is an eating disorder. Grazing, where you're picking little bits all through the day, that's an eating disorder. Overeating is an eating disorder. Just using food to fill a void is an eating disorder. And so those things really require some direct support to help change the behaviors. So the behavior is a big part. You've got to turn it on up here first.
That's what you mean by rewiring.
That's the rewire. You have to recognize that this is not easy. It's not going to happen overnight. And it will take some time. And it's also getting to know yourself. You might be someone that likes to exercise by yourself, or you might be someone that's more motivated with a group. And so knowing that allows me or anyone else that's helping to guide you better, in terms of what's best for you.
Now, I do want to jump to a question when you said guide me through this process, because weight loss is not just about me losing weight, but it starts this ripple effect in my body and my health. So what is the role of the primary care doctor? Because the reality is that most people do not have a primary doctor. There's some individuals that utilize the emergency room as their primary doctor. But you're speaking in a way that says that the primary doctor can help me lose weight, that it's not just me doing it on my own or by myself, but that you could actually guide me through this process to do it healthy, in a healthy manner. Help me understand that.
Right. Well, the thing about excess, gaining weight, being overweight, being excessively overweight or obese, is that it does have that ripple effect, like you're saying, in our bodies, on our health, right? And so before we know it, we are having an elevation in our blood pressure, cholesterol, or different things. This is where it's critical for your primary care physician to do an overall assessment to see what's going on.
Okay.
Is this happening because you have a genetic influence, which it might,
Okay.
but is it also happening because you're gaining weight? And do we need to put you on medicines, or do we need to help you lose weight?
Good question.
So that you can, be normalized in terms of your health, your metabolic parameters. I think what I like to tell my patients is, let's choose health. If you're choosing health, you're going to lose weight. Because if you always say, okay, I'm choosing health today, you're going to make a healthy choice for eating. You're most likely not going to overeat. You're definitely going to exercise or move more, is what I like to say. Right? And then you find the fun things to do in terms of movement. Right? And if we take it back to our spiritual being, you really started us off saying, Karen, I want to talk about our bodies as a holy temple, our holy temples. What are we doing? Right? Something that's holy is being of service to God, right? And a temple is where we expect His presence. Amen. And so if you really want to be of service to God, are you not going to keep your temple holy? And how do you keep your temple holy if you're not choosing health?
Right.
Sure, you can be utilized spiritually in many ways, but if you are at your best health, how much more can you be used?
Right.
How much more?
How much more? I love that. Choose health.
Choose health.
Choose health. And so when I'm choosing health, it's going to influence the choices that I make. And you're right. This is about a holy temple. Because what breaks my heart, not just as a minister, but as a nurse, but as a Black woman, when I see the condition of my people, of our people, it is heartbreaking because it doesn't have to be that way. And if this is the temple of the Lord and my body will allow me to serve Him and be of service, as you say, to Him, then I need to treat it with respect and with honor. And so it goes back to your rewiring.
It's rewiring.
Rewiring of my mindset so that I make choices that will honor, I call them Yah, that will honor Yah, right?
Yes.
And so I choose health. And that, to me, is like, okay, The light bulb just came on because I can put my faith into action. I say I believe that he is who he is. I say I believe that my body is a holy temple.
Yeah.
So now I have to act on it.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
I don't have to grab that cupcake.
Right.
Not every time.
Not
right?
every time, because everything in moderation.
Okay.
And so I think in terms of the rewiring, apart from knowing that, okay, our bodies are holy, it's a holy temple, it's that it's not going to happen quickly, and that's okay.
Right.
That you do a little bit every day, you know, and you are going to build to that. The other thing I hear a lot is, well, I've made a lot of changes. I've been exercising a lot and nothing's happening.
Okay.
And so the truth is, when you have gained weight, you cannot still keep doing what you're doing and get to see those results quickly like you're thinking.
Okay, so help me understand that, because what I've always thought, and tell me if I'm incorrect, that when we're on this journey of losing weight and we physically look overweight, when I start to lose weight, it's going to happen from the inside first. So the fat that's in between the organs inside that I can't even see, that is what I'm going to start losing before I actually see a difference in my waist or a difference in my stomach. Is that true or not?
Well, it depends on how much weight you're losing and how quickly you're losing it.
Okay.
I guess what I was trying to say was when people start taking on a healthier lifestyle and they're like, oh, well, I'm eating healthy. I've been eating healthy for 3 months and nothing's happened. My next question is, well, have you gained weight in the 3 months? No, you haven't, because you're choosing healthy. But because you've gained a certain amount of weight, you now have to go down in your caloric intake more than you normally do, even though you're eating healthier, to see a response in the weight loss.
So eat less than what I'm accustomed to eating.
Yes, because you've gained weight.
Okay.
So it's about energy. Food is energy, right? It's also medicine.
I was going to say, what about food is medicine?
Food is energy, but food is also medicine. And so smaller portions, right? Or you can move, not or, and
okay.
you can move more as well. Because unless you're moving like an athlete, you're not going to see that kind of result as quickly as you want to. You will see results, but not as quickly as you expect to or want to.
And it goes back to what you were saying about being patient with the process, because it took us some time to gain the weight. It's not going to happen overnight, so be patient with the process. And make, I'm going to say, choose health.
Choose health.
Every day.
Choose health every day.
How about every moment of every day? Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's unconscious. We eat unconsciously.
We do.
Right? We drink beverages unconsciously. And so we have to be conscious about it. So you're consciously choosing health when you wake up in the morning, you know?
Is that being mindful of the decisions that we're making?
Absolutely.
And I know I am guilty of that, of going to grab something when I'm really not hungry.
Yeah.
What I'm actually feeling is stress.
Yes.
Right? And so sometimes I'm a stress eater, but sometimes I'm a stress sleeper. So when I get really stressed, you find me in the bed with the covers over my head. But I can go grab some popcorn. I can go grab some chips. And so what I've learned is to try not to have that around me.
Right. Trigger foods,
right.
Right. Because if it's not there, you're not going to go towards it. But then if you've got a lot of kids in the house,
how do you not have it?
Right.
Sometimes?
How do you not have it? And so you really have to do the rewiring. You've got to work on it. And we don't want to. We don't want to have to think about what we're eating. We're not used to doing that, really.
No, and the unfortunate part is we start to think about it when we then have chronic conditions.
Yes.
When my blood pressure is not controlled, or now I'm a diabetic, or headaches or stomach problems. I mean, that is when you become mindful. But I will be very honest with you. I have been a nurse since 1993. And I don't find that many physicians, if I go to talk about my chronic conditions, that they actually talk about nutrition or even ask me the question, what do you eat? Or this may be a little bit too much information, how often do you poop? Right? And it's because that elimination matters as well. And I don't find that those are general questions that I'm asked, and it's only from my own research of being interested, that I've come up with, well, I really need to look at my food.
Yes.
What am I eating? Because if I'm eating bad, crappy food, then why would I think this holy temple would just miraculously heal itself if I'm not giving it what it needs?
Well, we're now training physicians differently.
Thank you.
And we are bringing nutrition into the fold, so that there's more conversation about nutrition, about the whole concept of food as medicine. Okay. But I think we also need to recognize that moving is also medicine. So it's not just eating, it's also moving, and so you have had the experience of not being asked what you're eating and so on. And again, that's around the limitations of what a medical visit is supposed to be, right? So it's like, well, let me really address this particular thing that, she came in for, he came in for, as opposed to spending time on, let's look at things nutritionally. But, should a medical provider not have that kind of time, the idea of, let me refer you to a dietitian, let me refer you to a behavioral counselor, just so that some of those conversations could get started.
And so let's talk about the resources that are available to individuals. So I gone to my primary doctor and everything is good, my blood pressure, my sugar, but I'm still overweight. What are those resources in the community that I could actually turn to? And I think about Weight Watchers. Is that something that you would support, or what are the other opportunities?
Right. So as long as it's not going to do any harm.
Okay.
Right? First thing is, it's not going to do any harm. And Weight Watchers has been known to be something that people really turn to very easily, very readily, to lose weight, and have done so successfully. And they have rebranded. What I like about their rebranding is that they are calling it wellness. And I think that's important, because along with the management of weight is the stigma of the excess weight. We still fat shame people, or at least even if we don't, they feel fat shamed, So we have to learn how to change our language and our tone and how we address someone who's overweight or obese, who may or may not have chronic conditions associated. So so in the community, there are gems. Right? There's the why. There are these programs like Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig and some of the others. I think it's really about what suits your lifestyle, your personality, your time, right? But also what's safe.
What's safe and will not harm me.
You don't want something to harm you, right? So you don't want to do something that's drastic, that's going to make matters worse.
Right. And I think we live in a society of where we want quick fixes. And so putting time and effort and energy into losing weight just doesn't seem right. It seems like I should be able to just do it like this.
Right.
But that is the unhealthy way that can bring harm to...
It's not always unhealthy if it's happening quickly.
Okay.
It depends on what it is and who's supervising it.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. And
so we've also got dietitians that you can go and see. And from a medical perspective, if it's necessary, there's surgery. The bottom line of all programs that are helping with weight management is to, regardless of what has caused the increased weight, is for your intake to be less.
Okay.
So if we're doing surgery, we're making the stomach smaller so you can eat less. If we are prescribing medicines for you, it's so you can eat less. If we're putting you on a medically supervised diet plan, it's so it can restrict what you normally eat, right? If we're asking you to move more, it's so that you can burn up some of that energy you're taking in terms of food, like food. So despite what the driver is for weight gain, the solution, until we know more, is really about taking in less.
So let's talk about the bariatric surgery. Is that the first resort or the last resort?
Bariatric surgery is an avenue for when you meet the criteria for bariatric surgery.
Okay.
And what that means is you're 80 to 100 pounds overweight, and you may or may not have some chronic conditions like diabetes or hypertension or sleep apnea or so on. Just because you meet that criteria, not everyone that meets that criteria wants to undergo bariatric surgery.
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the end of the day, if you have made the decision for yourself
Mm-hmm.
to do it, you're going to be much more successful than if someone says, you need to do this.
Right, because then you're talking me into doing something that I may not be completely bought into.
Almost with anything, if
Okay.
you're not ready for it, you may not do your best with it.
And it sounds like that's that mindset of,
Yeah.
okay, so you said 80 to 100 pounds overweight. So,
Or more. Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring it back down to my personal story, right?
8 pounds.
Not that it's all about me, but I do want to lose 8 pounds.
Great.
What would you tell me would be the first thing that I should do?
So in terms of a medical evaluation, I would want to know, if you have any chronic conditions and if you're taking any medicines for anything, because the one thing we overlook as physicians, what medicines are you taking or did I prescribe for you that cause weight gain,
Okay.
right? So let's look at the medicines and see if that's causing some issues. And is there an alternative to those medicines, if any, that are causing weight gain? Sometimes there isn't, and you must take the medication, right?
Okay.
So I like to make sure that I look at that to see if that's a factor. I do a 24-hour dietary recall. So what do you eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Right? What do you eat afterwards? How often are you snacking during the day? What types of things do you like to snack on? And then I give homework. I want you to do.
Okay.
You must do a 3-day food diary so that we can get an understanding of how you're eating. So it's not punitive. It's not, ooh, you were eating this or whatever.
Okay.
But it shows me when you're getting your cravings most, or when you are wanting to eat something, or when you might eat when you're not hungry. And that might be information for you too. It might be something that you didn't really pay attention to unless I asked, right?
Right.
So it's those things. And it's really trying to figure out the root of the weight gain, the 8-pound weight gain. Okay, Natalie, was it because you were just really working very hard and doing a bunch of other things and you didn't really get to exercise as much as you normally do? And so now you've gained weight? Because exercise activity helps to maintain your weight where it is, right? It helps to enhance weight loss if you're on a diet plan, but if you're doing it regularly, it helps to maintain your weight. And it can promote some weight loss on its own, over a period of time. So for me, I look at it as it's a little bit of detective work.
Got it.
What has changed in our lifestyle behaviors? What's driving the eating in terms of your breakfast, lunch, dinner, so on. Those types of things. I look at it from that perspective, and then we come up with a plan. For instance, if I recognize you have an eating disorder, then we have to work on that. We're going to work on that with counseling, medication use, plus all the other behavioral things that I talked about.
I am very impressed by your thoughtful approach because you're trying to get to the root cause. And I think that is why we struggle with losing weight.
Yeah.
We are not addressing the issue down at the root. We're not getting to the core of our eating habits. And so what you're talking about, doing a food diary, looking at the times when I get hungry and why am I eating, identifying, is there a pattern that I can then say, this is what's triggering my weight, versus just automatically going to a pill, or automatically saying you need surgery, or just automatically making assumptions without understanding the real issue. And so I am grateful that you shared that, because for me, it's an aha moment. And maybe I should do the 3-day food diary to see what I'm eating, because I know that we look at overeating, but what about undereating? Because sometimes I think I skip meals, and part of it is that I'm busy at work and I didn't bring lunch, so I'm not prepared.
Yes.
Or part of it is maybe I think if I skip a meal, I'll lose a little weight.
Yes.
And that's how I manage it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that, not eating enough.
Yeah, so if you skip a meal, typically what you do is you overeat at your next meal. Or you might have a bite of something here quickly just to hold you down, and a little bite of something later on just to hold you down, just to keep holding you down until you actually can sit down and have that meal at which you're so hungry that you're actually eating more than you normally would. right? So that's why when it seems like, and you don't remember maybe the little bite you had here or there,
Right.
okay? Or you don't recognize that you're overeating at that one meal you finally sat down to eat at.
Mhm.
And so you're thinking, I'm not eating that much. How is it I'm not losing weight? How is it
Right.
I'm gaining weight, right?
Right.
And so then you think, oh, yeah, I'm under eating. No, you really have to really under eat. Like, you will lose weight.
Okay. So I shouldn't skip meals.
You will see the weight.
Right. Now this reminds
Well-
me. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's not about the skipping meals. It's more about recognizing your hunger signals.
Hunger signals. Okay.
Right. And eating when you're hungry,
Not when I'm stressed.
not when you're starving.
Starving and stressed.
Yeah.
Now, this reminds me of intermittent fasting. I'm pretty certain that you're familiar with it. You know, Dr. Oz has it on his show all the time about intermittent fasting. Tell me, what are your thoughts about it? Is there any benefit to it?
Well, the literature shows that there is some benefit to it.
Okay.
And I think there's some benefit to it because you end up eating less, right?
With the intermittent fasting,
Yes.
I eat less.
You end up eating less.
Okay.
However, what I don't like about it is that I feel it promotes another form of an eating disorder.
Okay, help me understand that.
So if you're fasting to control how much you're eating,
Mm-hmm.
you could eventually spiral over into the extreme. There's always the extremes,
Okay.
right? And if you are going over into the extreme, I'm not eating because I want to lose weight, then you're eventually going to become anorexic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about, the thought of eating between certain hours.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the general public thinks that you can eat as much food as possible between 10 in the morning and 6 in the afternoon and you'll be just fine. No, that's not the thought.
Okay.
The thought behind that is that if you have a certain amount of hours that you only eat food, you're still only supposed to eat what you would normally eat, not more than.
Right.
And so by no longer eating at after 6 o'clock, you are reducing your caloric intake because whatever you would have eaten after 6 until 10 o'clock like usual, you're not taking it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's the concept behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when these things come out, I'm always concerned that it's not brought over in a way to help the entire general public
Right.
understand the limitations.
Right. So it's not a blanket solution for everyone. You would have to, it goes back to who you are
Yes.
and your lifestyle
Right.
and the choices that you make and rewiring your brain to say, okay, if I use intermittent fasting, because I do,
Yes.
I use intermittent fasting where I stop eating after 6 p.m.
Yeah.
and I may not eat until 12 p.m. for lunch. And then when I eat, it is to be a healthy meal. So I'm I'm not overeating, but I'm being very conscious about what I'm eating.
Right.
And then that period of time, making certain that I make healthy choices. And then I
Yes.
go back to the fasting. Now, when I lose weight, Karen, that is how I lose it. When
There
I
you
am
go.
being very mindful of that. Now, I can't do that all of the time.
Right.
But the moments I do it, it works for me. Now, somebody else will say, oh, that's crazy, I can't fast. And so I think it's to your point. Do what's best for you. And that's why there's so many options along the spectrum
Yes.
of losing weight and being healthy. And I think the key point that you would want to drive home and say yes or no is that as long as it doesn't cause you harm,
Yes.
right?
So the first thing is as long as it doesn't cause you harm, and then secondly, recognizing that whatever avenue you take, whether it's surgery or medicine or intermittent fasting, the goal of all of those avenues is to bring the caloric intake down. It's to reduce it. So even if there's something we discover the cause of obesity is this one thing,
One thing?
it will never.
It'll
just
never be one thing.
The point is, the solution is reducing intake. You know.
And it goes back to the root cause. Why are you eating?
To me, that's the most important scenario of all, because you cannot just take a blanket algorithm and use it across the board.
Right.
Everyone's different. And someone may need a bunch of small meals throughout the day, someone may need just 2 meals, someone may need a certain type, and someone may be eating out of an emotion that can be managed differently.
Right.
It could be a matter of changing your work style. I mean, there's so many reasons why, right? And so if we go to the root cause, if we're lucky enough to get to the root cause,
right,
then we're on the right track.
It's the thoughtful approach that you're talking about. I don't know how many of us actually write down the foods that we eat and think about, well, why did I eat at that moment? And notice the patterns. I think that whenever we're trying to live a healthy lifestyle, for me, it's about identifying my patterns, right? What is triggering this? Or how am I feeling in the beginning of the month versus the middle of the month? And that's why I journal.
Yeah.
Because I can see my mindset. If I look at the dates and see the patterns, I can see, well, I feel this way because maybe I'm PMSing. Because to be honest, in all transparency, that can make me overeat. That can make me feel stressed. And so when I see that pattern, I then can do something different next month.
Right.
But if I don't know it, if I don't see it, then how do I address it? And I think your approach about doing the 3-day food journal, for me, is the first step.
Yes.
Right? Because I can see the patterns and then I can do something about it.
Yeah, it gives you more information about yourself.
And it's becoming mindful.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I think you called it rewiring.
Rewiring. It's just that, though, a lot of us work on automatic.
We do.
You know, that is just our lifestyle. We have come a long way, like I said, technology and innovation, and we are doing more than we did 20, 30 years ago. Right? And so we're doing a lot of things automatically.
Without thinking.
Yeah, we don't really want to have to think about, that's not a burden when you have to think about what you're eating, so to speak.
And I will say, when you talk about burdens, it reminded me of meal planning.
Yes. Who wants to do that?
Who wants to do that? But there's so many different tricks. I love Pinterest, and they show you all of these different tricks to preparing your meals for the week, and how you cut your vegetables up and put everything in little baggies, and that's great.
Yeah.
But Karen, that just takes up so much time, and I have no interest, I'm just going to be real honest, in doing that. But I know that if I did it, I would go back to what you said, choose health.
Yes.
I would be making a choice that's healthy for me in order to feed my temple what it needs in order to glorify Yah.
Yes.
It really is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And barring that, eat half what you would normally eat.
Eat half.
Yeah.
Even the cupcake. Okay. Well, you have given us so much helpful information. Thank you so much. And I want to tie it into scripture because this is about a holy temple, a healthy temple, because we want to be of service. You said it so eloquently, to Yah. And in order to do that, I have to glorify him with my temple.
Yeah.
And the scripture text that is in my heart for this month is Psalms, I think 118, 23, where it says, "This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it." But then you and I were talking about this, and you have Philippians, I believe Philippians chapter 4, verse 13, which is plastered almost everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? It says that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Tell me why that scripture text, what does it mean, and then how do you apply it to our conversation today?
Okay. Well, I love your psalm,
Thank you.
your choice of psalm, because really, this is the day of the Lord. We should rejoice. As long as we can wake up every morning with breath, we should be grateful. We can actually say the words, "I'm choosing health." That's a reason to be joyful and to, rejoice, praise God. But when we look at taking care of ourselves and choosing health, it is not easy. And that's why I thought what would be so beneficial for this is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Right.
Because we do need to get our strength from somewhere. Right? And why not from the best?
I know. Why not from the best? I love how you said that, because he is the best. Amen. You said it so well.
Yes.
So we are going to wrap up this conversation, but I want to tell you what I heard, because I took a lot of notes from you.
Okay.
The one thing that you said, and you just mentioned it, choose health and use food as medicine.
Yes.
But then you also said movement as medicine.
Yes.
So they go hand in hand.
They
Food
do.
as medicine and movement as medicine. And then you said do a little bit every day. As you're choosing health, move a little bit more every day.
Right.
Make a good choice for that one meal. Use smaller portions. You said take in less calories,
Yes.
eat less, and be patient with the process. That's a tough one.
I think the patience one is hard.
That is hard.
Yeah.
But then the rewiring of our mindset, right? Which goes back to making a choice to be healthy and not sleepwalking through life,
Right.
not making choices unconsciously, but be mindful of what we're putting into our bodies
Yes.
and how we're moving and how we're thinking. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything? that you-
No, I think you got it all, and I think what's really, really important of all of the points that you summarized is the rewiring.
The rewiring.
Because if we don't turn the switch on up here, the rest is not really going to flow.
Absolutely.
So-
Absolutely. And then the root cause.
Yes.
Getting down to the root cause. So, thank you so very much. So, I always end with, now what, Lord? What is it that you need to do differently now that you've learned all of these wonderful tips that Dr. Karen Cooper has shared with us? Do you need to get to the root cause of your eating or the root cause of whatever underlying issue that you may be dealing with? To understand that our bodies are a holy temple for our Lord. We want to be of service to Him. We have to glorify Him with how we treat our bodies and what we allow into our minds and what we put into our mouths and how we move and live this healthy lifestyle. I have been blessed by this message, and I know the first thing that I'm going to do is to do a food diary, because I do want to see what I eat, when I eat, and why I'm eating. And then I'm going to take it to prayer, because once I've identified the issue, then I have to put my faith into action. And that is the key. So we've sat and had this discussion, but if you don't do anything about it, then you're not putting your faith into action. If you say that you believe in Yahweh our God and you believe in the Bible, then put your faith into action by taking that step to making certain that you live a healthy life so that you can have a holy, healthy temple. I have been blessed by our time together. Karen, Dr. Cooper, you are a blessing to me. You always have been since the first day that we connected many moons ago.
I can say the same for you.
Oh,
I really can.
Thank
Natalie.
you. Thank you. And so everybody be blessed. Oh, wait a second. I do have some announcements. This is the end of our 3-month pilot on KAZ. Larry and I have been committed to this every Sunday since we started back in November. And now we're moving to the show one Sunday a month. And that will be the 4th Sunday. So please, please join us every 4th Sunday here on KAZ at 5 o'clock p.m. Don't stop spending your Sundays with me. It has been a blessing to me. And then check us out on Because of His Grace Ministries on Facebook. Like us and follow us there, because there'll be a lot of updates coming through on our Facebook page. And let me make certain, one more announcement. Larry, I'm trying to get every moment. My women's retreat, I always forget to mention that, but this is our 2nd annual women's retreat coming up on Friday, April 26th and Saturday, April 27th. And it's called Peace in Stormy Weather, Staying Anchored Through Prayer. And this is our 2nd retreat. Our first one was so powerful that we are expecting even greater for this one. And it's about, how do you find peace in the midst of the storms of life? And then how do you stay anchored in the storms through prayer? Our keynote speaker is the Reverend Tamika Reed Sims, and our other speakers include Dr. Heather Burton, Michelle Crawford, and myself on Friday evening. It is going to be a wonderful spirit-filled retreat. Tickets will go on sale in February, so check us out on Because of His Grace Ministries to find out more information. And once again, thank you for spending your Sundays with me, and thank you for blessing me. Until we come back again on the 4th Sunday in February, be blessed.